We got a number of questions here.
All right.
All right, good. All right, we've got a number.
I walk around a lot because I got an ADHD and everything, and I got every kind of learning disability you can have. I'm walking.
All right, first question that comes in. Other than Bill Clinton, who was the best politician you've ever seen?
Woo! And on a politician by the well, I got to think about it. I mean, it's a serious question. You know, a statewide politician is maybe Edwin Edwards, who was 4 times governor of Louisiana. He was a guest of the federal government for about 7 years. All we like to say about our state, half the state's underwater, the other half is under indictment. Yeah, the most interesting, I never met him, but the guy that you should really Google, the most fascinating, was maybe Mike Mansfield, who was like the only person to serve in all 4 branches of the military or something, was ambassador to Japan, was an academic. He was a fascinating guy. I kind of like Senator Dole. He's a really accomplished guy. Yeah. You know, just sort of Kansas, Midwestern, kind of salt-of-the-earth guy. He's, you know, really got a lot of stuff done. A lot. President Bush 41 is probably one of the classiest people I've ever met. Anybody has. But in terms of raw political talent, yes, interesting about Obama, his ultimately successful in politics, he doesn't like politics. It's kind of odd that a man could be that successful at something, and he would much rather do math homework with his daughters than like go out and control a bunch of politicians. It's kind of odd. It's very odd when you think about it. Yeah. It's odd for a guy to be that successful at something and just kind of care so little about it. Right. I didn't like him, well, I worked against him, but Chavez was a pretty skilled politician.
All right.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Yep.
Interesting. Next question. Is the political discourse in Washington, D.C. as bad as it seems, and has it always been that way?
You know, I actually think it's a little worse, and I talked about it in my remarks. I think it is driven by partly the way we live, the way that we're clustered. I think it is driven partly by the segmentation of news sources and people just looking for validation here and there. I mean, I think the things that I talked about really, really contribute to it. And I also think that you've got to start by saying, I think my opinion is better than the other guy's opinion, as opposed to the other guy's going to hates the country. Now, again, you got every now and then something comes along in life where you just inherently think it's evil and wrong, but those things happen more rarely than you think.
Next question. Who do you think the Republicans and Democrats will nominate as their candidates for the next presidential cycle?
Scott Walker and Hillary Clinton. But it's a guess. I think, look, I think the Republicans are going to be, I think it's going to be fascinating because, you know, it's going to be a big sort of split. I think Ted Cruz is one of the most, in terms of raw political ability, it's pretty good. He's not Sarah Palin. He's not Michelle Bachmann. He's not Herman Cain or Rick Santoro. He's just a good look. I think guys. But if you ask me, is he good on his feet? The answer is hell yeah. He'll cause a lot of grief over there. Okay. They generally go with somebody a little more stable. It's not going to be Chris Christie. That's a pipe dream.
Okay. Is social media changing politics and the way government works?
You know, again, I think that people use social media. They hook up and they hook it up for their sort of own purposes. You know, it certainly changes. I mean, Obama knows used a lot of it in the campaign. In you know, Ohio, you see so much more than other places. Actually, my new theory, look, you know, I'm just saying this. It's going to be very hard for the Democrats to lose a presidential campaign. I don't say that because I'm a Democrat, although I hope I'm right. I wrote a book called 40 More Years. In the last 6 elections, the Democrats in every election have carried states carrying 242 electoral votes. So that doesn't count New Hampshire, Virginia, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, Colorado, New Mexico, or Nevada. So honestly, if the Democrats were just to do that and carry Florida, they could lose everything else. Because the 28's the number. I mean, the Republicans can win, but they have to win every swing state there is. Every one. And until, the composition of the country changes. Yes, there's more people, we have more immigrants in the country, we have fewer white people. Who got to get over it? The country's changing. Change with it or get left behind. You can't go back and say, one of the things, I know there's a lot of Republicans here, if I was giving Republicans political advice, I'd say, never say this. I remember when this country was great. I remember when we had, because a lot of people say, well, shit, I wasn't part of that. I don't think it was too great. If I'm a black person or a Hispanic or a woman or something, no, I don't think that. We can build on the things we had, but you deal with the country you're going to have, not the country that you wish you had back then when you ran everything, because guys like me ain't going to run the show. Other people are coming on, and that's the way it works. When here, we were talking, coming here, and the Eastern, they had this thing, and the Eastern European migration came to lead, and guess what? Things change. Now things change, and you got to change. You got to change with it. It's not going to go back to the way it was. I can't come up here and say, well, this was an industrial power on Wami River, and it ain't going to go back. It'll be something else. It might be even something better. You don't know that. But things change. You got to either change with it. Universities, they got to change. It's not going to be the way it was 20 years ago. That's not it. The whole thing is under stress. And as opposed to spending all your time worrying about how we can preserve our past, acknowledge, respect, inform yourself about the past, but the question is, train's leaving. Get on it. Could run over you.
So this next question wants to know, have you ever thought about running for public office yourself?
No. I wouldn't vet well. I make Rob Ford look like Mother Teresa. My kids don't need to know everything. I hung a little paper when I was in college. What can I say? Hey, I didn't get married till I was 49. I don't think I'd make it back.
Okay, let's see here. Next question. Will Condoleezza Rice ever be nominated as the Republican candidate for president?
No. I mean, it's just not. It's just that's not where the Republican Party is. She's an elegant woman, elegant lady. The provost of Stanford is brilliant. And everything else, James Carville and Condoleezza Rice are not going to be Republican nominees, I can tell you.
Next question says, it seems like the most charismatic candidate for president always wins. Is it as simple as that?
Richard Nixon? Lyndon Johnson? I think people, I think people, look, it helps to be, if you're president, it helps to, take a good shower and string a sentence together, but I think it's a little more complicated than that. Although I got to tell you that Mitt Romney didn't have a lot of charisma.
Let's see, it says, next question, what advice would you give to young people who are aspiring politicians?
I'm going to say something here. I like politics. I like politicians. Actually, as a group of people, I'd rather be with them than a group of bankers or a group of anybody else. I do. I like them. They're generally kind of personable. They like life. Some of them are crooks. Some of them say stuff to get elected. Some of them do this and that. But I'll tell you something that they do is, and if you want to get into politics, understand this is the consequence. And you want to get in and be an honest person, is you will fail publicly. You have to be willing to accept public failure. If you don't get into the graduate school you want to, or you don't get the job you want to, you know about it, your family knows about it, a couple of your friends. If you're in politics, you lose an election, you're the butt of 8, 9 jokes. Your kid gets a DUI, it's on the front page of the paper. You late, 2 days late paying your property tax, that's it, you're done. So you have to be willing to accept that. And if you want to get into politics and you don't like people, it's not going to be very happy. You know, and get in and have a purpose other than you just, it's good to be ambitious. I got nothing wrong with it. You see Hillary Clinton, I'll tell you a little secret. She's ambitious. Off the record. Everybody in politics is ambitious. You want that. That's a good thing. I want all the young people, I want you to be ambitious. I want you to go out and do things, take risks, do all these things. It's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But so I would say, if you want to be in politics, accept failure, accept the fact that you're going to be publicly humiliated, accept the fact that you're going to lose, and then say, unlike everybody else, when I was doing a presidential campaign, the one thing that you do when you're in politics is people get up in the morning and say, I wonder if what I do really matters. If you may work at I'm not that there's anything wrong with it, but you may work at one restaurant, another restaurant, you work at one bank, you work at another bank, you do this, you say, when you're on the city council, the one thing that you know is that what you do matters. That what you do impacts people. That Jackie Robinson once said, the measure and value of a life is how that life affects someone else. People in politics, for better or worse, they know that what they do matters to someone else. That these decisions are profound. And that's the reward that you're going to get for doing it. And it's a good ego trip. What can I say?
Next question, is the future as bleak for the Republicans as it appears given demographic changes in the United States?
No, because they'll think of something different. You can't keep doing the same thing. Sometimes, as I said, I was on Bill Maher after the election. I said, as they say in Louisiana sometimes you got to hit that boy upside the head with a 2x4. They're like, Mitch McConnell said something brilliant after the government shutdown. He said, in Kentucky, they say the best education is the second kick of a mule. They might take 3 kicks, but at some point you're going to get sick of getting kicked by the mule. And the other thing, too, is demographically, this is a terrible thing to say, but I'm 69, a lot of these guys are not going to be around 20 years from now. and the country will change and the party changes with it. It just, sometimes it takes a few more kicks of the mule.
Next question, will a Bush ever be nominated as a Republican candidate for president again?
Yeah, it's possible. If Jeb Bush ran, he'd definitely be. He's pretty good. He's the kind of guy who kind of gets it. If his name was Smith, he would have been the Republican nominee in 2008, anytime he wanted to. I mean, he was classic governor, knows how to win elections, ran a big state. He's classic sort of Republican nominee. And it'd just be, like I say, his name was Bush, actually, in the end, hurt him. Maybe it'd help him get elected, but that's what it is. But it's possible, sure. And the young one, George P., is a really talented guy, people say. But who am I to say? But Condoleezza Rice ain't going to win. I don't know.
Let's see, is negative campaign giving way to more positive campaigning? Is the voting public turned off now by negative campaigning?
Well, see, people are turned off by banks leveraging 35 to 1, selling people crap mortgages and then bundling them up and reselling them to somebody else? Or you think it's like lobbyists going in and getting some tax break in the middle of the bill at 2 o'clock in the morning after they did this? Or you think it's the fact that you got big, agribusiness coming in and subsidizing sugar so kids can get fat and you can have more diabetes in the country? Or you think some hack running a 30-second negative spot is the problem with the United States? I'll submit to you that compared to other stuff, it's really pretty little.
Next question.
I let you ask them, I answer them, huh? Are we going to beat Northern Illinois? Yes. My wife went to Western Illinois.
Okay, next question. It seems like politicians are only interested in getting reelected rather than doing what is right. Is our form of government broken?
Well, first of all, this is how many times you hear this? I just wish they would just do the right thing. Why don't they just do the right thing? Well, goddamn it, dang it, everybody agrees on what the right thing to do is. If it was that simple, yeah, just do it. That's the argument you have. The argument you have is what is the right thing to do. Because what somebody else thinks is right, somebody else may say no. So you got a bunch of guys sitting there saying, oh, what the hell they need to do is get rid of the corporate income tax and cut Social Security benefits. Somebody might say, well, I don't know if that's that good idea. So you can't, that presupposes that there is a person who is ordained with such wisdom and such knowledge and such contempt for democracy that they know the right thing, and we should just say to hell with the people, we're just going to do that, and that will make us sort of brave people. Resist that. Resist that. Have an argument over what the right thing to do is. Inform yourself. Understand what it is. Because generally, when somebody says they need to do the right thing makes them more money. And when somebody tells you that money is not important, some bullshit. That, I wrote a whole book on the middle class, the decline of the middle class. Incomes have been stagnant in this country since 1973. I don't have to tell people in Toledo that. We have a national commission on the deficit. We have a national commission on education. We have a national commission on energy. Where's the national commission on the middle class? Where's the national commission as to how we get incomes up? Where's the national commission of how we train our workforce to meet this? Where's the national crisis? Where's the emergency when you got families breaking up because of financial stress? And then they come in and say, yeah, but we got to cut Social Security because that's what, but we have decided that all of this is the great problem facing America. And then we wonder why people are saying, hey, what's this? How does education affect the middle class? How are we doing things here? What can we do? What kind of long-term policies do we have? That's the stuff that matters. But they go and they say, do the right thing. Do the right thing is always going to be to help them hurt you. Be careful. Don't go with the program. Resist it.
Next question. Do women constitute the preponderance of the swing vote in this country?
Well, they're 52-48, so there's more of them than there are of us. And you know what? They're coming up in politics, too. And it's good. It's a good thing. It's a real good thing. My daughter, my oldest daughter, man, she loves Hillary. It's good.
Similar question.
Swing me pretty good.
Similar question. Will the growing Hispanic population ultimately decide all national elections in this country?
It's very influential, but I mean, you got to be careful about a blanket statement like that because the growing Hispanic population is, a lot of it is, a lot in California, Arizona, Texas, Illinois, significant number. I mean, it clearly has an impact. Look, Florida is 29. If the Democrats at 242, that do the math, that busts a number. But yeah, it's an important part of our country to have magnificent contributions to the United States. I think it's great. Let me tell you something. I'd rather live in a country people want to come to as opposed to one people want to get out of.
Who is the worst politician you've ever worked for?
I wouldn't say it. I just like how everybody I have professional. I've worked for some politician. I won't say.
In your book, you talk about the demise of the middle class. Is that the result of outsourcing manufacturing to developing countries?
Well, globalization is a kind of a fact. We never put into place a real sort of strategy to deal with this. And it happened, and it was sort of allowed to happen, and we not only had actually, I'm very proud of the fact that the only time we've had any actual growth in middle class income was in the 90s under President Clinton. But there's new sort of research on trade, and I'm not a trade economist, that said we could have been a little bit smarter about the way we did this. But I don't think in one sense you can really stop global forces at a point. But manufacturing maybe is a little bit of a resurgence. It could get better. You know, the good news is that wages are starting to go up in China now. I mean, that's the way that things work. But probably the biggest effect, and again, I'm way out of my area of expertise, as he said, is automation. In one of the things, so I taught this in class, the whole, if you stop and you think of these 3D printers, everything is going to be localized. The whole Walmart built on a supply chain may not need supply chains anymore. They may set up a factory right next to the store. You want something, they just make it right there. It's all made now it's all automation, unfortunately. But that may be where the future is. But what we haven't done is a nation, and we talked about a lot of different things in the book. As a nation, we haven't said, we have a crisis here. We have a crisis with the middle class. We have a crisis in our inability to grow incomes. We have a crisis that's going on. You cannot do, which got me to write this book, is saying is, we do a lot of focus groups. You cannot do a focus group with middle class people where at least one person doesn't break down and cry. And these are good people. These people, their kids are moving in with them. They're moving in with their kids. What is this stuff about people don't want to work? I hear people working 2, 3 jobs. Kids that can't live. And this is day in and day out. Everybody in this audience knows somebody whose kids have moved in with them, or who they've moved in with their kids, who's taken on extra work, who had a job making $23 an hour, is now doing something, at $11 an hour. Everybody. And we're told, these people are if they just tried harder. There's a lot of people trying out there. There's a lot of people that are trying hard out there in the country. We haven't been able to think of a way to give them the kind of future, the opportunity, the future that they need. But the idea that somehow or another that this country is a bunch of lazy bums that's sitting around is insane. You go to some town in Ohio, they have one opening, $8 an hour job at Walmart. They got 700 people sitting out there in the cold. They're not lazy bums. But we're not. And some of it is inevitable, not all of it. We could put a lot of, I think, this is just me, people say, are you crazy? Labor is cheap, money is as cheap as it's ever been. Why the hell aren't we building broadband and high-speed rail? Why aren't we building this crumbling infrastructure we have and putting people to work, to give people jobs and build stuff and make things happen? That's what's going to, that's the kind of thing that we can do.
Next question. State governments are backing off funding for higher education, causing universities to have to raise tuition rates. Now people are complaining about rising tuition rates. What are universities to do?
We're going through this at LSU. I mean, honestly, when I went to LSU Law School, this is so sad. I mean, my tuition was $100 a semester. pay it right there. In that we had all money. The world is different now. Look, I think some of these cutbacks are horrendous. The idea that I live in Louisiana, and my child, and they have these scholarships they now give, tuition-free stuff, all of that's become the vogue thing. Yeah, education is expensive. But if you think education is expensive, think of how expensive ignorance is. That's the most expensive thing in the world. And I don't think that the proponents of education have really, because this is a gospel true story. And you can look it up. I'm not making it up. There's a parish in South Louisiana called Lafourche. It's a very famous big parish. They actually had a referendum to take money from libraries to put it to build jails. Thank God they beat it back. The librarians just went nuts. At some point, they did, in a real, this is as Cajun or South Louisiana places you can get. But they didn't want to raise taxes and they had to build a jail. Well, at some point, you know what? If you're going to close libraries, I'm sorry, tax me. Don't close the library. I'll pony up a little extra. At some point, we got to force the conversation. At some point, when it started, were there inefficiencies in higher ed? Yeah. At some point, the things you do, but has this thing gone on to some absurd level? Yes, and we're paying for it. If you look at what's happened, I know this close. If you look at what happened to LSU, we were ascending school. We were doing very well. We're now down. It's hurt. I hate to say it, but it's true. And the places that maintain that kind of investment are going to do better. But until people in higher ed quit fighting with each other and start fighting with the real sort of enemy is that the idea that somehow or another everybody can do more with less, as opposed to the idea that, this stuff is difficult, training people in this economy is difficult, educating people is difficult, we can't do it for free. We're at this kind of level here. And until there's sort of one voice that speaks to that, and I think that people are starting to understand that now. I think they're starting to see that these cuts, not just in higher ed, but secondary, elementary too, they're starting to see it sort of across the board, that we just have gone too far. And I think there's going to be a pushback. But you got to be able to explain to people not the cost of education, but the awesome cost of ignorance.
Right. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. I understand that you're a resident of New Orleans. What's the state of New Orleans after Katrina?
Well, I just so happen to have one of my, I think if this thing works, and with me and technology, you never know. Dun-dun-dun. Okay. This is my favorite quote. This is by an Ohioan. In a letter that he wrote, a gentleman whose name was Laficidio Hearn. And he wrote this to a friend in Cincinnati in 1877 about New Orleans. Times are not good here. The city is crumbling into ashes. It has been buried under a lava of flood of taxes and frauds and maladministrations, so that it has become only a study for archaeologists. Its condition is so bad that when I write about it, as I intend to do soon, no one will believe that I'm telling the truth. But it is better to live here in sackcloth and ashes than to own the whole state of Ohio.